Hello, hello. It's coming up to Christmas, and this is the time of year where families often have difficult conversations around aging and even death, and why Christmas brings them roaring to the surface. So let's start dealing with the truth gently. Christmas is not always cozy and it's concentrated. There are big emotions, big love, big memories, big expectations, grief, comparison, and longing, all in a really tiny time frame. Plus, when you start adding alcohol, extra too much food or food that doesn't agree to you, fatigue, and old family rules that people have got into the habit of behaving like, we wonder why things spark off and get a little fractious. Now, for many families, Christmas is the one time of the year when lots of generations come together. Not visit, though, more of a collision. My name is Gayle Palmer, and I have created alignedlaterlife.com to help legends and midlifers and their families get through the getting older, developing and becoming wise part of life and creating a life that they love, that truly inspires. And difficult conversations are part of that journey. So if you think about it, parents are older than they were last year. You are too. Maybe their health has shifted. Maybe someone didn't make it to the table that would normally take place. Someone else is perhaps struggling, or the dynamics have changed, but the expectations have not. Have you noticed how people hang on to those childhood expectations of fun and excitement and all of that good stuff, but they're still in their 50s or 60s or 70s even. So whilst everyone is together, there is also this big white elephant stuck in the middle at the table that people maybe didn't invite. Aging, illness, dependency, death, unspoken, heavy, loud in the silence between people. Why I care so deeply about these conversations is because I'm passionate about this subject, because I've seen the cost of having it not working. I've seen people live their lives tolerating stuff instead of living the lives that they love. I've seen relationships run on obligation, guilt, and unspoken resentment. I've seen regret arrive far too late, when there is no longer time to repair or speak or do anything about it. And I believe that with the whole of my being, that we are here to live life fully, in our fullest expression, honestly, and in creating relationships that feel true and honest. We are not here to put up with things. We are not here to wait until later. There might not be later. We are not here to die with a list of, if only I had done something about, fill in the dots. And this is where difficult conversations become sacred ones. They can shift the whole system, and sometimes they aren't as difficult as you think. Now, Christmas, like it or not, is an emotional amplifier. Christmas presses every emotional bruise that we might have thought about, even if we don't have. And here are a few reasons why it can be quite so triggering. When someone walks into a room, The history that they have and bring with them walks into the room too. It speaks before they even get there, in fact. Have you noticed how families revert to old conversations, old ways of being? The peacemaker returns to their peacemaking role. The rebel is still a rebel. The doer is still creating dinners, tidying up afterwards, helping. The quiet one is still sitting in the corner, quite overlooked and almost ignored. Even when you're 60 or 40 or 50 or 80. That knowing from the past is still present. And expectations are so heavy, they're so big. There's a pressure to be grateful, to be happy, and to be together. It feels messy, lonely, and painful sometimes, like it really hurts. Now, here's the thing, change is unavoidable. Parents age, mobility decreases, dementia might be appearing, or traditions are no longer working and serving the people who created them to start with, if they even created them to start with. Change, though, threatens the illusion that things can stay exactly the same, because that is simply not true. Grief can also show up quietly, even when no one names it. In fact, especially then. And it might not be grief for a person or a loss of a person or an animal. It might be the loss of an idea of how things should be or could be or were years ago, and it might not even be the truth. This is why reactions can seem so out of proportion. It's not about the burnt potatoes, really. It's about everything that they represent. The perfect Christmas lunch, the star on the top of the tree that's been there for 40 years, but frankly is a fire risk and accident waiting to happen. Now, the real risk, though, is this white elephant in the background. The real risk is not upsetting someone. The real risk is not upsetting someone with a conversation. It's not knowing what mattered to them, what they stood for, what they believed in, or never being known and heard yourself. That kind of avoidance creates loneliness. It creates separation. And that is such a shame within a family, particularly if they profess to be quite a close-knit family. So the thing to do to start with is to start with your own alignment. Before you speak to anyone else, come home and centre yourself. Ask gently and without judgment, what kind of later life do I want? What do I no longer want to tolerate? What matters now more than it did 10 years ago? Or who matters now more than they did 10 years ago? What regrets do I refuse to carry into the next year? When you are aligned with your own truth, your voice softens. You speak less to convince others. You just become connected. The inner work in the foundations for an aligned later life creates some of these connections, helps you unpick some of the areas where you might have been stuck in the past. Because at the end of the day, everything starts with you. That's where it begins, and it will end with you. How do you open conversations, though, without blowing up the volcano. So these conversations are not about cornering someone after the pudding. They're not about making sure they can't come out of the kitchen until you've had the conversation. They're about an invitation to engage in a conversation. First of all, name what's happening. For example, I'm noticing that things are changing a little with you. You don't seem quite the same person that you did a year ago or 6 months ago. And I would like to talk to you about it together. Not in a scary way, but see if we can find some common ground and places where we can help. Is that okay? So you are naming the reality, but not creating the drama and the story and the upset around it, if you can avoid it. Another thing to do is to share from your heart. Instead of asking a question straight away, maybe try, I want to have the best relationship that we can in the years that we have left together, especially as time feels more and more precious. And it's important to me. This is a heart-led conversation. It doesn't have an agenda of what you're going to get through and what the outcome's going to be before you've even had that conversation. It's also really important to normalize discomfort. Pretty much everybody, when you get into more difficult emotional conversations or mental conversations that have yet to be really thought through and worked out, they will feel uncomfortable, try and avoid it, be upset. That's often the first barrier. But if you say out loud, this conversation might be awkward and it is okay. However you are with me is okay. And we can take it slowly, bit by bit. People start to relax. They realize that being emotional, feeling how they feel, and they may not have done that before around that particular topic, so be gentle with them. This becomes a safe environment for them to say it how it is. Now, there are also specific conversations and scenarios around Christmas that make it more emotive. Now, how do we handle those? Think of it this way. A parent who is clearly struggling with memory or physicality, but refuses to talk about it. You notice that they've got a bit weaker, a bit frailer. They change the subject if it becomes a little too pointed, or they just, bat it off, joke it away. Maybe in that situation, try, I'm not trying to take anything away from you. I just want to understand what matters the most to you right now. Not tomorrow, right now. This respects their autonomy, their sovereignty, and it gives them an opening that's gentle that they are then invited to walk through and have a conversation about. Does that help? Here's another scenario. A couple of siblings disagree about what should happen next. Oh, how many family members do this over Christmas? Now, old dynamics flare, older sibling is in charge, should know what to do. Next sibling down is the worker. They're the ones that put it into action. Someone wants the action. Someone wants to not have to think about it or deny that anything else has changed. But if you can bring it back to their values, what's important to them, and say something like, perhaps we can talk about what feels most important to Mum rather than what each of us thinks is best for her. This brings back the values of what's important to their parent rather than introducing conflict, because opinions often fuel conflict. We all have our own opinions and our own ideas. None of them may be right, though. And here's another scenario. You or someone else feels unheard or dismissed. And this can be really painful, particularly at Christmas, where there are all these expectations that should be lovely and loving and kind and thoughtful, and life doesn't always go like that, does it? In this case, maybe saying, I'm not looking for an agreement, I'm just asking to be heard. That, said calmly, gives you an opening to speak your truth and perhaps have it land just that little bit deeper, and takes away all of that past history that at that moment in time is not relevant. Now, there are plenty of soul-led approaches that can safely be used, from neuro-linguistic programming to counselling to all sorts of other things. But the most important thing is to reflect back to that person what you've heard. If they say, I really want to be independent, I want to stay at home, reflect back and say, well, so what I'm hearing is independence and living on your own is really important to you for as long as is possible. Begin to soften and meet them where they are. It's not that they don't realise that there aren't possible obstacles in the future, but right now that's what they would like. And ask for permission to go that little bit deeper. Would you be open to having a slightly bigger question, or say a bit more about that? This is an opportunity to give consent and to receive the consent that you are allowed to go a little bit further, as opposed to barge in there. And then, when you're looking at future options, if things changed from where they are right now, what would you want us to know, or what would you want us to do on your behalf? And this begins to open up people's imagination. What would I really want? What would I really not want? That sometimes is what comes out first. And then for all of these conversations, anchor them with love. That highest emotion that we all adore. Say it plainly. This conversation comes with love from my heart. I just want what's best for you. It sounds really obvious, but it's incredibly powerful. Now, there are certain questions that begin to open up real conversations, not the kind of how's the weather conversation. But these aren't an interrogation. This isn't like going into an exam. They're an offering. They're an opening to have a conversation. And then hopefully things will gradually unfold. What feels most meaningful in your life right now? What do you want to have more of whilst you still can and are able? What do you fear losing at your age? And perhaps why? That might be the ability to drive, or that might be having their neighbour move out, having been neighbours for years and years. What does dignity look like for you? Listen. Wait. Listen. You don't need to have an opinion. Just listen. If your health changed suddenly, what would matter most to you? For some, that might be, please look after the family pet. For others, it's something completely different. Excuse me. What do you wish people understood about you? What are you most proud of? Right now or in your life in the past? What conversations do you wish you had had earlier in life? And with whom? What still feels unfinished or brings up emotions that's a bit tender? How would you like to be supported if life becomes harder for you? Big questions. And they don't have to have the answer right away. What would make the rest of your life feel well lived? When you ask some of these questions or other questions, allow the answers to be imperfect, to not be polished and complete and whole. Let your silence, but being supportive, do the work. There is no blame. There's no "I told you so." There is no regret. These conversations are not about being right. They are being real. They are about being truthful. They are about being honest with oneself. Blame freezes out relationships. "I told you so" just builds walls. Regret grows like a weed in silence. But love grows in honesty. And this is why Aligned Later Life exists. Creating an aligned later life creates lives and relationships and genuine love and connectedness. Not later, not someday, one day, but right now, in that conversation. It's about clarity, compassion, and being willing to have a little bit of courage to ask those questions gently to start with. About meeting aging and death with eyes wide open and your heart engaged. If this resonates with you, but you might be thinking, and I don't know where to start. How do I do this? What do I have to know? How can I have my family help? All of those questions, come and join me. This is exactly why I have created Foundations for an Aligned Later Life. You can join the waitlist now, and you can start shaping a later life rooted in truth and honesty and connection and love with choices. You can find more details via the website www.alignedlaterlife.com and look for Foundations for an Aligned Later Life or Fall. Because the greatest gift you can give your family this Christmas is not perfection. It's simply your presence, your love, and the courage to speak what matters most to you. I hope that's been helpful and helps you get through some of the more difficult conversations that might crop up this Christmas. My name is Gayle Palmer, and I have created Aligned Later Life to serve you and your family and create the life that you both love and deserve the most. Take care for now. Bye-bye.